Hello, this is Dan the Furniture Repairman. Today we're going to show you how to fix this broken leg on a table. Now we're going to go through this real fast because this is a complicated, lengthy repair, and we're going to show you the steps. And we're going to jump around pretty quick, but I'm pretty confident if you watch the video a time or two, you'll be able to do it. Now where the leg broke is where that spindle comes in from the side right there. That weakened the leg, and even though it was all glued together, it didn't hold up in time. Now we have the table turned on its side. There you can see the break, and what we're going to do is just dry fit it by hand, and we can see it goes back together pretty well. But the way we're going to clamp it is a little different. We're going to clamp with a hose clamp just like this, and that'll hold it nice and tight while our adhesive dries. Now for an adhesive, we're going to use an epoxy. We love epoxy, nice and strong, has gap strength. We're going to speed up how we mix it. Now this epoxy is a 1-to-1 ratio, but read the manufacturer specs, and whatever your epoxy requires, do that. Now this cures in 15 minutes, but I always give it much longer to dry than the cure time. So you're going to mix it up, read the specs, and then you're going to start to apply it. So here we go. Again, real quick. We're going to put the epoxy on both sides of the break. I never put it on just one side of the break. I always push it in, and I push it into the little grooves and everything like that, so it has teeth and it bites in there. So on goes my hose clamp, and this is all sped up. I wish I could work this quick, but I just don't anymore. I don't think I ever did. So there's my joint. I'm cleaning off with a little bit of denatured alcohol right there. And what I'm going to do is grab my impact driver. I have a nut driver on the end of it, and I'm going to tighten this up about 90% of the way. And then what I'm going to do is take a screwdriver, and I'm going to give it the last few twists with a screwdriver because I want to have a good feel of exactly how much I'm tightening. I gave this about 45 minutes to dry, and then I pulled off the hose clamp. There you see right there what's left. We do have a piece of wood that's missing. I do have it, but I'm really not going to need it. I'm going to embed this piece of rod right inside of it there. So that's the way it's going to fit, and I'm going to just kind of scratch some lines with my utility knife so I have a feel of where I have to cut it into. After that, I'm going to take my Dremel, and I'm going to use just a little bit of a cut bit right here, and I'm going to start defining where I'm going to have to make these cuts. And the Dremel has a little bit of a disc on it, not too big a one, and learn how to cut without breaking these. That's kind of a skill in itself. After that, I'm going to take a chisel, a couple taps, and clear it out. Now I have more or less the top part of where that threaded rod is going to go defined. After that, I'm going to take my drill bit, and you can see me holding the threaded rod up to it, and I'm going to just start punching a bunch of holes in this to the desired depth. I don't need them to be real neat and straight. I just kind of need to start hogging out some wood so I can insert my rod. Now remember that the epoxy is going to be encased in the steel, in the wood. It's all going to become one piece after that. And then we're going to drill into that spindle that comes in at a 90-degree angle that made the whole piece weak. So what we did is we're going to tie the steel rod into that spindle also and take that weak point and turn it into a strong point. And that's why this thing broke. There wasn't enough wood left over after they drilled the hole for that spindle to come in. Now there's a little bit of a cut saw bit that I have on a die grinder, but it'll fit in a Dremel also. It's a rotary rasp sort of thing. This brand is called Cutsall. I'm very fond of it, and I'm just going to take it and use it just to kind of clean out all my excess wood right here that I didn't get out with my drill bit. Now I'm going to just keep working this process, cutting it out, maybe using my utility knife a little bit and drilling some more holes into things until I get it to where I want it to be. Now what I want to do is I want to use the steel rod to sit all the way in there. Now I'm coming back again with my Dremel and my little bit of a cutting blade right there. I'm going to keep working this down until I get to the correct length for this rod. And this is what we're hitting at the end. I'm jumping ahead here, and I'm just using my rotary rasp right here, kind of define everything out. I don't need it to be pretty. Matter of fact, if it's a little bit ragged, I'm happier because the epoxy will sink in there. And that's my rod sitting right in there. So we have it sitting correct. It's not too tight. It's kind of has a little space, which I do like because I do want the epoxy to kind of envelop the whole thing. Now, here's the epoxy going into the groove we just cut, or the channel we just cut. I have the table now turned on its side so that the epoxy will stay in there. And now the other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to butter the epoxy onto the threaded rods. I'm going to force the epoxy into the threads so that it really holds onto those threads. And then I'm going to put the whole thing into that channel right there. And I'm going to push it down, and I'm going to make sure I have epoxy on all the sides, including the top. If I need to add a little bit more to it, I will. But as you can see, I push it down, and it's pretty much the epoxy is covering it all up. I'm cleaning it off with a little bit of a denatured rag. And here's what we're looking at right there. That makes me very happy. I believe when that dries, that's going to be extraordinarily strong. The epoxy's dry, but we have to fill in this area that we went and chopped out of the leg. And what we're going to use is epoxy putty sticks from Mohawk. There's a bunch of different colors. They're on display there. I'm going to use primarily these two colors. On a piece like this, one color rarely will work. I end up mixing and matching colors and add them in layers. So I'm going to start with the lighter color. Now this is an oakish sort of color. It doesn't have any red in it. And what I'm going to do is use it as my base. I'm guessing a little bit, but I could see inside the wood there. I could see what the base color is, and I know I'm going to need that color in there. Now, this is a large area to patch. It is not going to be easy to do. So buckle up, get ready for a long, bumpy ride if you're trying to do this, and it'll probably take you a lot of different tries to get it right. I've been at this for a good long time, and it still took me a long time. So the epoxy, what we do is we just kind of squeeze it like this until we get it mixed all one consistent color. Once you have it mixed one consistent color, what I do is I start forcing it in. So I push it into the grooves very hard. I'm pushing it into the corners because what I want to do is force it in all those little nicks and cracks in there so that when it dries, it's going to hang on there. It's not going to pop out. And then I want to do it on the sides. Now, the epoxy that's dried in there is very smooth. You could scratch that up a bit, but if you get your epoxy putty pushed into the sides well enough on both sides and it all joins together, I'm pretty certain it's not going to pop out at you. It's not going to move. It's going to hang in there. This is also a little bit structural, this product right here, so it will help this leg become even stronger once it dries. And what I'm going to do is spritz it with a little bit of water. So the water is going to let me smooth it around a little bit with my fingers. And then what I do is I use a couple of different tools. One of my favorite tools to use is a razor blade. I could use it to push it in, and I could use it to kind of sculpt with on the piece. I can cut off excess where I have it. I'd rather spend time with it in this phase while it's still malleable and work with it than have to sand it afterwards when it's dry. Now it's sandable, and it's just part of the job. But the less sanding you have to do, the faster it goes, the easier the whole project is. So you see me just cutting it back right here, and then we're going to give it a little bit time to dry. Now this stuff takes about 15-20 minutes to dry before you can sand it. So that's what we're doing in between each layer here. This is a piece of 150 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to show you a quick trick because I'm going to make a little bit of a sanding tool. I'm going to take some masking tape and I'm going to put it on the back of the sandpaper. And it's going to do a couple things for me. One is it's going to make the sandpaper a little bit better with the way it flexes and moves so I can sand this round area. And the other thing is I'm going to use the back of the sandpaper to smooth out the moldable epoxy on more steps. So I'm not all the way filled here. I know that. I have some gaps, and not only that, what you're going to see is I'm a bit of a maniac. I'm going to cut a bunch of holes in it. So here's my sanding paper, and you can see just like that. I'm going to use it to shape that right into that round shape right there, back and forth. I'm going to try not to go over the edges too much, but you're going to have to sand the edges. That's just part of it. And you're going to have to figure out how to touch them up. But this is it all smoothed out. And you can see on the top by the spindle, I'm still missing some epoxy in there. Nice and smooth. And guess what? I'm going to ruin it now. What I'm going to do is take my utility knife and I'm going to scratch a bunch of lines in this. And what I'm going to do is in the lines and in the rest of the piece, I'm going to force the darker epoxy in there. So I'm going to create a bit of a grain effect. And that's what it looks like now. That looks horrible. And that's just ridiculous that I did that. But you got to have a little faith right here. So now I'm coming back with this darker epoxy here. And if you look closely at the wood, you'll see the lighter yellow color at the bottom. You'll see the darker epoxy on top. You'll see some black in there. There's a bunch of different colors in there. Now this film is sped up to try to save time. I'm forcing this just into the grooves with my thumb. And then it's the same exact thing. You spritz it with a little bit of water and then you smooth it out a little bit with a razor blade and then you get it nice and smooth. Now, this is what it looks like after the epoxy is dried. A good trick I use, a little bit of scrap epoxy is left over. It's nice and hard, so that means it's sandable on the piece on the repair. So here I am, I got my sandpaper with my tape on the back. I'm just going back and forth and I'm doing a little bit of hand sanding and I'm going to sand off the extra, the darker epoxy, and we're going to leave it inside of the grooves. Now, we're done sanding. I'm going to wipe it with a little denatured alcohol. You see I've sanded the edge so I get a good transition between my epoxy and my wood. And this is what we're looking at. So we got some red into there, and then we got some big areas of red also. So we're not looking great, but we're looking a little better. We're creating something organic here. And this is a bit of a leap of faith you're going to have. We can do this a lot of different ways, but I like adding these lines in because they are so powerful on the other side when I'm done with my touch-up. Because I feel like I still have too much light in my first moldable layer, I'm going to cut some more lines and add some third color in there, a darker color. So I'm going to cut it with a Dremel just like this, and I'm going to do them kind of random, and I'm going to start and stop. I'm not going to go the whole length. I am going to cross over some of the edges so that it helps join the moldable area to the repair. And then here it is done. I'm going to wipe it off with a little bit of denatured alcohol. And what I'm going to do is mix 2 parts of moldable so that I can get the desired look. Here are the 2 parts moldable that I'm mixing. I've already mixed them together, and now I'm going to kind of just twist them together like this and join them up. And I'm going to mix them together a little bit, but I'm going to leave some hot and cold with the colors. That may help this be a little bit more organic. The epoxy is dry and sanded. Now I'm going to spray it with some sealer. This is a flat sealer. I'm not adding any shine in there. And here you see where we're at. And the sealer is going to help us see the wood and the epoxy where we're at. That's going to help us determine our touch-up. So quick spritz, not too much because we don't want a ton of this to have to sand or dry. And then we're going to move on to our touch-up powders. There you go. We're using Blendall touch-up powders from Mohawk. These are very good for touch-ups. I like to use denatured alcohol. You can see it in that clear cup right there. Just a little denatured alcohol on your brush and then get your desired powder. And you can mix colors together and you can use more denatured alcohol and thin it out. Here's a brown being mixed with an oak. That'll kind of give you a greenish brown look. Now I'm going to apply my color to my repair area. And you could see it's not a good match at all, but it is the base color. That's the hardest thing about learning to do touch-up, is seeing what the bottom color is underneath all those other colors. So as I look at this leg towards the bottom of the screen, I could see there's more of a yellowish color in there. Now I'm coming back with that darker reddish brown, and I'm just making a bunch of little dots all over the piece. And what I'm going to do is let it dry. I'm going to rub it with my finger a little bit, and we're going to move it around and make it look very organic. Now, to me, touch-up is just like playing golf. There's no hole in one. You're never going to get it right in one color. What you want to do is stay out of trouble. So hit it well off the tee, down the fairway. Give yourself a good place to walk up to and hit it again with a smaller club. Every time you're reducing the amount you have to do so that you can get it in the hole. You're always aiming for the flag. Now you see me rubbing it with my finger right here. It's making it a little bit different look. I'm streaking it. I'm running it with the grain. So I'm trying to create a bit of a grain look. And then what I do is I spray it with my sealer because nothing's holding this together because the powder just, the denatured alcohol evaporated, just left the powder. But There we go. That is closer to where we want to be. We're not there, but we're also not in trouble. That is very important. Now, if you get yourself in trouble, just take denatured alcohol on a rag and wipe it all back off. But you can see we're closer now. What I really like is the grain lines that we took the time to put in. That's helping the way it looks. And now here I am a few stages down. And these are the two colors I'm going to add in now that are most often missing when I help people with repairs. One of the colors that my techs often miss when they're doing touch-ups is orange, and it usually scares them to put it on a piece. But you're not putting it on full strength, you're putting out a thinned amount of orange, and you can see it there. It's pretty orangey. But you have to remember that a lot of antiques have been refinished with orange shellac, and our sealers are clear, so they're not going to have that orange in there. So you see me right here, I'm brushing a little bit of orange on top of this, and I'm going to move it around with the denatured alcohol. And you can see it lightens it and it kind of brings it more to the look of the piece. It's going to counteract that green look we had a little bit, and it's going to streak it in. I'm going to move it all over the piece, spread it around with the denatured on the brush, and then shoot it with some sealer. After that, we're going to add in black. So we're going to jump ahead. We sprayed our orange layer with some sealer and we let it dry. This is where we're looking now. We are getting closer. We keep using smaller and smaller clubs to get to where we want. And now we're going to put black on. And black's another scary to put on, color to put on. But the thing to remember is black is the mother of all colors. Black has all the colors in it. So it is a very good color to use to tie things together. And it will darken things quite evenly. So you can see I'm just kind of brushing it in spots. And then what I'm going to do is take my fan brush there with some denatured on it and really move it around and thin it around and look at it and try to get that organic feel to it. After that, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of sealer and let it dry and see where I'm at. Sometimes you got to do 2 layers or 3 layers of the same color and add them on there because you don't want to go too far too fast. No big deal. Just do it. Now, when you do touch-ups, you're going to learn one of two things. Either you got the right color on or you got the wrong color on. Either way, you're learning something. If you got the wrong color on, just put a little denatured on the rag, back it off, rub it off, and then go again. Even if you shot sealer on it, you can back it off. So here's our black coat. We're going to shoot it now. Well, after it dries, a little bit of sealer. We're going to fan it real quick, and then we're going to hit it with our sealer, and then we're going to see how we're looking. Okay, the denatured's dry, and here I come with my sealer coat on there. A little light coat. Now I am using a flat sealer, so it will dry without as much of a shine as normal. And it will be shiny while it's wet, but as it dries, it will flatten out. Here we go. Done with touch-ups. We got to let the sealer dry. Then I'm going to hit it with some coats of flat varnish. And here's your before and after. So I think it looks pretty damn good. I'm happy with that right there. I think the customer's going to be happy. We have that strong rod in there. We've filled it all in. Anybody looking at it isn't going to be able to tell it's been repaired. And it should hold up for the next 50 years, 100 years, however long somebody wants to hear. Thanks for watching. This has been Dan, the Furniture Repairman. Hopefully this video helped you fix something or learn something, or maybe you just put it in the back of your brain and one day you'll find a use for it. If you have any comments, leave them below. I will try to get back to you. You can check out our work at our website, danthefurniturerepairman.com. You all have a good day.